welcome to the Godcast.
Nothing is as it seems. Nothing. I mean, literally, nothing is as it seems.
We took authority for truth instead of truth as our authority.
The great deception is still to come.
Not every human you see is human.
A lot of us equate our value in life to the things that we have or the things we're able to acquire. And not the things that we're able to pass on.
But just sharing this story allows those people who are just starting out to recognize that there's somewhere to go.
Do you find solidarity within the differences, or do you find division within the similarities?
And it was a battle for my soul.
It's not if you buck means the gospel. What's up now?
Welcome to Godcast,
the Goodness Over Darkness podcast.
Here's your host, Emmanuel Kingman.
It's showtime. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Godcast, the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. I'm your host, Emmanuel Kingman, and here with me is the great Chudx. What's going on, my friend?
Oh, you know, it's it's kind of there's some specialness to today, as far as I'm concerned. You know, we got a full moon. Full moon should be rising up, maybe already out where you're at, but it'll be coming up here. I don't know, about 4 hours from now. Should see that thing rise, and that's going to be a full moon that will carry on into tomorrow, which is 9/11. So, you know, I'm keeping my eyes open.
Yeah,
seems like a time that some people that I'm not so fond of might be paying attention to some things that I don't even know what to pay attention to.
Right, and a new king was crowned today,
right,
which is pretty significant when you have the understanding of a biblical perspective, because today is the 10th day of the 7th month, which is a day of rest, and it's a day of atonement. So that the crowning of the king today is very significant. The NFL starts this week. Well, it started Thursday, but it was only one game, so the rest of the games start tomorrow, 9/11, which I'm sure they're going to do a moment of silence for the passing of the Queen, and you know, that whole thing. I saw that.
Be huge, I'm sure.
Yeah, I saw that, like India football or soccer, you know.
Yeah.
India, that they were doing some kind of moment of silence on 9/11. So I'm sure that there's some kind of significance to it that we don't even know yet, that somebody somewhere is going to blow our minds on Wednesday of next week and say, you know, this and this happened.
Right. Or even if not Wednesday, 10 years from now, we'll look back and go, oh yeah, that was the weekend. That was the time.
Yeah. Well, and you know who's New York is playing Tennessee, so it's the New York Giants versus the Tennessee Titans on 9/11.
Titans on 9/11 with a full moon in the morning.
Yeah,
yeah, a lot of stuff. You know, it's I just came in. I've been outside staring at the sun because right now we're inundated with smoke. This whole region is just smoky. It's been hazy for a few days. I'm actually glad that I can smell smoke today, because I've been not believing that it was smoke, but now it's starting to smell like smoke, which is something. Not that I think that smoke is good. It's just
nothing is as it seems.
It's
nothing. I mean,
it's better than that it's just spray or something like that, or. You know, because we've got just these white skies. Today, the smoke is the thickest it's been, but it's so thick right now. It's like 5 o'clock here. Sun's up high, and I'm able to stand out there and just stare right at it with no need to turn my head at all. I can see it really well through the smoke.
Is it like a little ball that you can see? Like, is it green or anything? Any different color?
Oh yeah, it's bright orange. It's a bright orange disc is what I can see. And it's kind of crazy as I'm staring at it. You know, I'm not talking too long, you know, just, you know, 5-6 minutes, something like that. And I could see patterns on the face of the sun that were starting to look an awful lot like patterns that I see in the moon. And I don't know if there's anything there. I mean, it also could be, swirls of smoke or clouds passing by or something to make darker shapes.
Right.
But I kind of kept seeing the same sort of pattern that at least reminded me a lot of what the pattern on the moon looks like. So
Wow, that's very interesting.
yeah, I mean, I'm open to some kind of, I mean, they could be the same thing. They could be reflections of each other, or something to that effect. I mean, they're the same size. I'm
thinking electrical discharge or something that created those spots. Then
sure
creates a mud flood scenario on the Earth. It heats it up.
Yeah. It's also my wife Lanny recently asked me if I had ever seen the movie Vanilla Sky, which I haven't, and she hasn't either, but she was hearing that term in reference to old photographs. You look at it and it's always a vanilla sky because the skies are always just white. You don't see clouds in the skies in old photographs. And I was going, oh, okay. I kind of took that in. I looked at what the movie was. It doesn't seem like it's about the sky at all. I don't know. It just looked like a crappy romantic comedy suspense film. I don't know if you've seen it.
I have not.
Yeah, it didn't look appealing to me at all. But that term is in reference to that, to just a whited out sky. Because as I'm looking at it right now, it's like I'm living under a whited out sky with all this smoke. It's just white. It's just vanilla, you might say. And I'm looking at the sun, which is a bright orange. Someone might even interpret it as a bright yellow. And something that's passed through my head over the last few months is I look at the sun, not in the morning or in the evening, but during the day, and it's so white. I go, why did anyone ever draw a yellow sun? Like, I know it's orange in the morning and in the evening when it's low, but I had never seen a yellow sun. I don't think it's either this bright white or the darker, the one that you can look at more easily in a sunset or a sunrise, which appears more orange. But someone could interpret that as yellow. What if we had smoke or spray or something whiting out the sky for, a century or two, which was when we laid down all of our storybooks where we depicted the sun as yellow over and over again. And that becomes, I mean, what crayon does a child grab when they're drawing a sun?
Yeah.
It's always yellow, but they're not looking up to the sky and saying that's yellow, I'll grab yellow. I don't think.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So what's all the smoke from? Do you know?
It's fires, wildfires.
Is it wildfire season?
It's wildfire season. It's a little late for it. We didn't get much most of the year, so I think they're making up for lost time. Okay. We had some a couple months ago that they said were coming down from Canada. We're like 30 miles from the Canadian border. So the closest, most vast wilderness is in Canada to us. But I heard from someone today that their stepdad had driven through this area called Sumas and he saw the fires, which I'm not doubting him. I don't think he was like either his stepdad nor him would make something up, but that's really close to us to have like a 3-day buildup for it to get this bad. And I've still not seen any ash. So it's all, I don't know. There's probably some fires over there, but there's got to be bigger ones either up in Canada or out in the Cascades. I haven't done every now and again, I Google, wildfire searches, and they give you maps and they say where they say places that there are supposedly fires burning. And it's never really been that interesting to me. I've never looked at that and gone, oh, this makes things make sense. It's always kind of, okay, that's what they say. I'll take it. But, just with a grain of salt, like I do so many other things. Cause I don't know. It's really smoky. I mean, I might just be underestimating the amount of smoke that could come off of a wildfire, depending on the size. I mean, maybe this thing is bigger than I'm imagining, but for it to be right here in my county and no ashes and you know, it's not even that hot. It maybe peaked out at 80 degrees today. It seems like if there was a huge fire burning, it would increase the temperature. But, you know, I'm no scientist. I don't know. Maybe that wouldn't actually increase the temperature over here if we're far enough away that the radiant heat from the fire itself, you know, once you're a certain distance, it's not going to raise the temperature.
Right.
But it would make sense. It would make sense to me if it was like, man, it's getting up to be like 100 degrees and it's smoky and there's ash everywhere. And they're saying these fires are here. I'd be like, oh yeah, that feels like what's happening. But it doesn't feel like anything's burning out there. But like I say, started to smell the smoke today, which is, it's almost a relief. Not that I'm for wildfires by any means. It's just, it's better than, you know, some psyop going on where they've got HARP, you know, pulsating something through our sky to make it turn a milky white.
Right. At least you can smell some kind of evidence, or you have access to some kind of evidence now.
Yeah. Right. Because it was about a month ago. I mentioned this on Debra Gets Red Pilled, but it was, we had someone make a delivery at my work, and she came in and she was wearing her mask, and she told everyone they should be wearing their masks because of the wildfires. And I look out the window. I'm like, is she crazy? But she continued on and told them that you can't see the smoke from these fires because they're so hot, but the smoke is more toxic than usual. So masks are being recommended. And I was just like, okay. I've seen a lot of people smoke cigarettes through those masks too. So I don't think those are going to help with any kind of smoke, but sure enough, a couple days later, we did see some signs of smoke, just it was different than this. This is really white. That day it was more brown. The sky, especially not direct right above me, still looked kind of blue, but farther out it looked kind of brown and
like
just
a
kind of
hazy,
gross looking.
Yeah. Well, I hope that whatever it is, they get it under control and that you guys can return to a more natural environment rather quickly.
Yeah, me too. It's also, you know, weather's turning. We could just get dumped on with rain anytime, which would be helpful. So
we're getting flooded over here down the southeast.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been raining, or there's been a greater than a 50% chance of rain every day since July 9th.
No way.
Yeah,
wow.
It's crazy. It just rains so much.
Yeah, that's abnormal, right? You're normally real
as far
dry.
as I know, you know, I've been here 2 years now. I don't remember it ever being this way, but I have also the last 2 years, I haven't had a purpose to be outside every single day or checking the weather report, you know, the upcoming weather. So now that I'm coaching softball, you know, I have a reason to check the weather and be paying attention to these types of anomalies. So it could have been that way before. This is hurricane season now, but July and August isn't really hurricane season. So I don't know. It's strange to me. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. You know, you say you didn't pay attention before and now you are. Like I catch myself with that on things all the time. I think, well, you know, I'll be questioning something about the moon coming up and down in this spot or that spot or whatever. And I'm like, I don't think it ever did that before. But I also didn't pay attention carefully, at least, to that before. So did it happen and I wouldn't have thought anything about it? Or, you know, did it happen and I noticed it, but it wasn't something that I hung on a hook in the back of my head to actually, you know, retain and think about later?
I think that's a big part of the conspiracy theory community, is that all of a sudden when you wake up to things things come into your awareness and you're like, what? How did I not know that? That must be new. And it's like, no, that's not new at all.
It's been there a long time. You know, cell towers is a good example of that. There's so many cell towers that I'm just like, when did that go in? I know that wasn't there, you know, 20 years ago, but was it there 10 years ago? I don't know. You know, when did that pop up? I didn't see him constructing it. I've never seen him constructing any cell towers. They just sort of are there one day.
That's a good point.
And I'm like, you know, once I really started dialing them in, I was like, man, I pass like 15 of them on my way to work every single day. And maybe 2 of them had been noted by me before I started paying attention, you know? So it's like, I mean, the things are everywhere.
Yeah. Well, that brings up an interesting idea that I've had before, where, and I'm not the only one to have this idea, but when you wake up, you may wake up in a different realm than you went to sleep in. That it's like these subtle changes happen the next day, Mandela effect, essentially,
Mhm.
that you wake up in a reality that's slightly different, and there's all these little background changes that you've never paid attention to. They're all different, but because you're not paying attention to it, you don't really notice. And
Yeah.
I've had a lot of weird experiences where my neighbor's car was a different color, like it was always black, and then one day it was dark blue, and then the next day it was black again. But it was the
Mhm.
same make, same model, same year thereabout, parked in the same
Parked
spot.
outside the same house, and
Yeah, so many different strange things like that. There one time I went down a road and the construction was finally finished after like a year. And then the next day, and this was the same day as that car was different. The next day, it was like they painted over the lines that they just completed and put cones back up, and like they were blocking you off in traffic to maneuver you back the way that it was. It was like,
Huh.
that's just weird that it, like everything went back to reverted back to the way it was the day before, and there were
Yeah.
several anomalies that day.
Yeah, it's like we have these little reality shifts,
Yeah.
like we slide over, then
Yeah.
maybe we slide back, it's or we slide to another one that's more reminiscent of the previous one, but it's still different. It's different in 100 other ways that you don't see until you see it.
Right. And is that on the fractal nature? Is that happening within our bodies? Like when these cell towers pop up, is it because we all of a sudden we have more metal within us? Is it, are there different satellites essentially, floating around in our bodies that are these different signals are attaching to?
Hmm. Creating the need for it,
Yep.
and therefore they manifest, they
Right.
become, or
Yeah,
we
we
shift
go
over to a
right.
place where they already exist.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Weird thoughts,
or
but it
or
it
are they
makes
all
sense.
always there and we don't see them until they have a use?
Oh, that's a good one.
They're just there, but they're not being used, so they don't exist.
Right. I saw this this interesting thing. I don't know what it was from, like the Sci-Fi Channel or History or something. Somebody had it on Instagram, a clip of it. They're over in Russia, and it looks like some kind of I don't want to say cell phone tower necessarily, but some kind of like electrical station, like with the whole Tartaria type of uh energy is just pulling energy or from the ether, like you're just pulling out the energy from the ether with these different shaped objects and antennas and all that. Well, it looked exactly like that, and they're like, this is in the middle of nowhere in Russia, like why would someone build this? And it was just like all these structures, and I'm like, is that just an energy center? Is that what our energy centers are? Our energy centers, are they actually pulling energy from anywhere other than outside of the air? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know what's going on there. I would like to talk to an electrical engineer or someone that like works with that equipment to see what they have to say about it. Like we were just saying, I don't want it to be something that I just woke up to it and all of a sudden it has to be this conspiratorial way that I've just heard about. I want to really vet what's going on there.
Yeah, I had a great conversation a while back with a guy. He goes by Big Country. From his
Oh yeah.
podcast is Beer Whiskey Conspiracy, I think.
Yeah.
Some combination of those words, I believe. And yeah, we talked about satellites and electricity in general and underwater sea cables and stuff, and that was pretty cool because he's an electrician.
Oh
so
yeah.
he had a deeper understanding of how a lot of these things work, because like he was able to tell me what he thinks satellite TV dishes are. Whereas I was kind of starting to go, oh, what are these things? I don't get it. But he feels pretty confident. He understands how those work. Like they're all pointing in the same direction, and then they're not pointing to space. They're pointing across the plane, all in the same direction. At least the TV ones are. And it was that was a really good conversation. He might be a cool guy to talk to about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was on their show, Whiskey, Beer, and Conspiracies. Yeah, Big Country is a nice, fascinating guy. He's actually a Christian as well. So
yeah,
that was a good episode. I was on his show. I really liked it, talking to them guys. So maybe I will be able to bring him on and talk about that.
Yeah, he's great to talk to about it. Like, one of the things he said to us on that conversation was that that it's a simple fact that no one understands how electricity works.
Yeah.
And, hearing that from someone who works with electricity, and he's into it too. He's not an apprentice who just started this week and, is shooting his mouth off or anything. He's someone who's been in this career for a long time and has a pretty deep understanding of it as like a technician, I think would be the right word. Someone who works with it all the time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I got a couple people in my life that I could actually talk to about it. But when I was talking about specifically like those energy centers, like what's going on, like someone that works on there, like where is this energy being pulled from? My little brother, he owns his own company now. He finished his apprenticeship like a year and a half ago or so. So he's doing it. I could ask him about it, but he's always super busy. So, well, I'll get somebody to talk to me about that stuff, and I'm going to learn about it because it's very interesting. I want to know about things that I don't know about, and that's something that I'm curious and I don't know about.
Electricity, the electrical grid, and all of it is very fascinating. On those power sources, those little like conversion stations. I don't know what they're supposed to be. But like I noticed one recently, there's a cell tower that doesn't have any of those little fins across the top, the triangular fin. It just looks like a flagpole. There's a few of them around my area. And the first one I noticed them and I was questioning them. And then finally I saw one that was missing a panel all the way around up towards the top. And I could see big fat cables running all the way around the whole thing. And that made me go, okay, there's a lot of power running up this thing. And then I started looking for more that replicated that one, which they're big and fat and they're panel covered, not just a steel pole. But I found another one. It's behind a hardware store and like in a strip mall. And I went behind there and sure enough, there's never a flag on this big fat flagpole. And it's inside of one of those fenced in power stations that's back there. And there's not one wire that runs to it. Nothing runs to it. Now, I'm not saying that can't come from underground, it's, but from right there, I can see a grocery store in the parking lot next to it. And they have power lines running to there. They got power lines running to the hardware store, but not this one spot where there's a big power station and there's a giant flagpole inside of there. So,
yeah,
so many questions.
Yeah, those power stations, they have great interest. So that's something that I'll have to get into. So now you're here today. We were talking a little bit about, so I listened to a show that Mimi wanted me to listen to I don't even know. I forget who it was at this point, but she goes, "Hey, can you listen to this and then, respond to some of the things that this guy's saying?" And this guy was just like talking craziness about, like, he was a Christian and he was, I guess, indoctrinated into a way of thinking for a long time. And then he did LSD one time and transcendental meditation. And then he was like, "Oh no, that's Christianity is completely a lie." And then he goes on, he's like, Jesus is Lucifer's son and it's actually a woman. And he's just saying like this stuff is bonkers is what he was saying. And so I just said to her, what I thought about it. And it just was like, it was irritating listening to it. So I was like, look, if anyone wants to debate about whether Jesus is God, hit me up. And I put that on Instagram. And now you don't want to debate, but you were like, well, I have some questions that I would like some answers to. So now brought you on, and we were going to do just a private conversation, but we kind of thought that maybe people would benefit from hearing the questions because you're a good question asker, and you're a very thoughtful person, and it could help people in their walk in some way. So we are here now, and go ahead, you could take it away.
Yeah, so I don't know if it'll come off so much as questions, like in the form of a question, but it's like there's some things I'd like to describe which leave me questioning things.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things from that post was about saying amen at the end of a prayer, and that could mean Amon Ra. And you mentioned the intention behind the word and all of that, but we'll get to that. It's the reason that really struck me was just that morning I had said prayer, and at the end of my prayer, I don't always say amen, but I did, and it was a private prayer by myself. And I got to the end, and I said, and I was standing up to leave the area I was, and I said amen, and I started walking away. And my mind just I probably wasn't as deep in the prayer as I should have been, because I wasn't reflecting on what I'd just been praying about. Instead, I just kind of went on to the next subject in my head, which was, I just said amen. And I started thinking about word magic and things like that. And I just that very morning before seeing your post, I thought, what if there's been a major psyop throughout time to get us to say a word which in some way deletes our prayer, and that was amen. And that, like, prayer can be, as powerful as I believe it to be, but that we somehow are using some type of word magic that's just sort of, cancels that out. And what if that was amen? Boy, think about all the prayers that would have been canceled if that's the case. I don't necessarily think that's the case at all. It was just a thought that I had, and then I saw that, and that made me, whoa, for that to come up twice in a day.
Yeah.
But it comes down to, like, I've had throughout my life, I've thought about words a lot, and for about 20 of those years, the thoughts that I had were that words don't matter. It was something to the effect of that intention is all that matters. It doesn't matter if you swear or curse. It matters if you say "fuck you" to someone with hatred in your heart. That's as bad as saying anything else with that same level of hatred. Like, and in fact, like, I might have even thought it out that you could switch the words. You could switch "I love you" and "I hate you." And if you said "I hate you" with all of the love in your heart towards the person, they would feel that intention and that love. And well, I mean, really, it even goes back as far as when I was young, real young, like 10 to 15, somewhere in there. A distant relative of mine had a stroke, and they couldn't talk anymore. And I went to visit them, and it was, kind of creepy, like it is for a little kid to see someone who can't talk, who's had a stroke, who you've known before. Her face was kind of messed up, and she didn't have words anymore. And one of the adults in the room told me that they can still think just fine. They can think everything they've always thought, but they've lost their words. So they can't express themselves. They're not thinking in words anymore. This blew little Chud's head. It was like,
that's a mind-blowing concept.
It really is.
Yeah.
It stuck with me forever. It still sticks with me today to think. And I think about this when I look at animals, and when I think about consciousness all the time. I think, I have an inner dialogue always.
Mm-hmm.
That's thought. That, I mean, I might even at times describe consciousness as a series of words. Like, these words go through my head, but that there is a way to think without words, to think everything that we think but not in the form of words, because that's how we play, or at least I play, like everything out in my head. And that's where, prayer, which is relatively new to me. I took a good, 2 decades off from prayer. I prayed when I was little, but I didn't understand it. Then I became an atheist for a long time, and I probably laughed at people who prayed. I did laugh at people who prayed. I'd see someone praying in a restaurant before their meal, and I'd think in a genuine butthead voice in my head, they're praying to God. God, like how dumb are they? That's like superstition or something, which is not the way I feel anymore. We'll say. But with like where I went with prayer, I started by just giving thanks out loud before meals with my family. And that eventually evolved into me personally, by myself, privately, I should say, speaking with my grandfather and my great grandfather. And when I say speaking with, I never received a response from them. It was I would update them. It was like a affirmation for myself. I'm out here on the farm that they built, and I would thank them for that, and then tell them what I'm doing. And it was like they became really profound check-ins that would help me feel good, because I don't know, I'm a little prone to depression throughout time. I can feel like I'm not doing enough, that there's always more to do, and I didn't get done what I should have done. But when I reflect on things in that form, I would tend to get to like feeling good afterwards, because I have accomplished a lot. But there was another evolution in my prayer that was far more impactful. And it's also the time that I brought Jesus Christ into my prayer, which was I started asking for guidance instead of just checking in with the world. Right. I still do that. I still speak with my grandfathers. It's good for me, I think. But along with that, I ask for guidance from Jesus Christ. And I think that my prayers have gotten deeper. I'm starting to maybe get outside of even the linear thought that I'm talking about, where it's in words. I'm using the word guidance, but I'm asking for much more than guidance. I'm asking for help. I'm asking for things. And not in a selfish way. I guess that starts sounding selfish when you're just, I'm asking for things. I'm trying to step out. Like I say, I'm trying to step outside of the words and just it's impossible to express with words.
Right. It's just an understanding that you have, that you're passing along. It's a feeling that you're running through, like you're checking in with yourself, and you're like, I'm feeling this way. And it's not that you're thinking those words, but you're just feeling that. And then you're kind of sending that out.
Yeah.
Is that it?
That's pretty good. Yeah. It's like I'm allowing my emotions to go out.
Yeah, that's giving your burdens over to him.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, that's a really good way of putting it. So that all comes down to just try and put into place like what I'm thinking when I think, is amen canceling things? I don't know. I don't know that amen or the word Jesus or God or tree or chair like actually have any relevance. That's a long time thinking that I've thought that, but I've been trying to break that and get outside of that, if for no other reason than just to exercise my brain and think about the world from another point of view. And I think I found something to it that I do believe that words have meaning. I don't know how deep I really go on word magic. There's spells. We spell them. We put intention behind them, and I believe in manifestation and all these things, and we do all of this through words. But when you take an intention, if you take intention in and put that behind the word, like, I feel like it's the intention has to be so much stronger than the word itself.
Yeah. So, and I'll give a little background on what you're talking about specifically for that post. Was that I wrote on there, spiritual people, because this is something that I heard in that same show. Was I said spiritual people will say something like, intention's the only thing that matters, but in the next breath they're making fun of Christians for using the word amen. But if, and this is my injecting the conjecture, and now is that if the intention's all that matters, then what's it matter what amen actually started from? Did it start from Amun Ra? I'm sure that there's biblical scholars and historians that'll say no, that it started from this way. And there's going to be a lot of people that said no, it definitely started from that way. And there'll be some other people that said no, actually you go back further in time and it started way back then from this person. And it's like, to me, intention is a huge factor in what we do, but also at the same time, the exact phrases that we use can be very meaningful as well. I'm sure that you're aware of the different experiments that Japanese physicist was doing with the words the plants were growing, and he would say certain words to it, and he would say curse words to it, and they would die right away. And he would just write on the vases or whatever they were growing in. He would write words on it, and those plants that he wrote curse words on, they would die, and the ones that he wrote good things on, they would bloom quicker and more full. So there's something in the middle of intention as well as what word you're using. So if I think that it probably has to do with the person that's using it. If you don't have an understanding outside of the way that you're using it, then it can only mean what you're using it for. And specifically for amen, well, now that I pray as much as I do, and I've heard people pray my whole life, the way that everyone's always ended their prayer is amen. So I wouldn't really know how else to end a prayer. I'm thinking about it here, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't know how I would end a prayer. And I think that the collective intention, especially in this country, has nothing to do with some maybe Egyptian deity, that it would be just that's the way you end prayer.
Right.
So it could be, that's a interesting thought that you said, like it cancels out the prayer. But I know for me that my prayers have been answered, so many times over. So I know that isn't true. But at the same time, it is a way for those who observe that deity to use that deity's specific name publicly with their intention going towards that. And then when everyone else is joining in that maybe that all that energy does go to that deity, because they're looking at this person who's then looking to that deity. So does it all get wrapped up and go to that deity? That's a possibility that I think is a good probability, actually.
Sure. And that could happen over time, over hundreds or even thousands of years, in such a way that it becomes so far disconnected that the people saying it like genuinely have no intention, zero intention of Amun Ra, but it is invoking that in some way. When I thought it that morning, when I said that the cancellation, the like kind of deleting your prayer, as I thought it out a little bit more, I was like, it's like, what if ending the prayer is the wrong idea? Like that we're supposed to leave, it's like you're on a phone call. You're on a phone call with God or with Jesus, and you're speaking with him, and you finish saying what you're saying, and then we say goodbye, and then we hang up. And that maybe we're not supposed to do that. Maybe we're supposed to like leave that line open.
That's a very good thought as well.
Like that we in quotes end our prayer as we stop talking, but we're not shutting the prayer off. The prayer stays open. All of our thoughts, all the words, the inner dialogue are part of the prayer. But when we become more intention to speak with God, that's when it's what we think of as prayer, and that we're trying to put a cap on that when we put the amen there. Now, I don't believe any of this like firmly. It's all just questions, which is it kind of moves into it's part of that tweet or Instagram that you had as well. That like I said, I'm praying to Jesus now, but there's like a side of all of the Christianity, or more specifically the Christ side of things, that I get hung up on in a certain way. And I'd like to express that to you and just see what you think of it.
Yeah, sure.
Because I think if there's anyone who could understand where I'm coming from, it's you. And that's like to fully accept Jesus Christ into my heart, like with 100% certainty, I feel is like answering a question that maybe I don't want answered. Like, I want to keep a very open mind about a lot of crazy ideas. And I mean, I want to go full spectrum. Like I'm afraid, and afraid's not quite the right word. It's not fear. I don't want to lose my ability to entertain simulation theory.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of feel like if simulation theory is real, then Jesus can't be real or something.
Oh, I can, before you go on, I want to answer that, because that's something that Jesus answered for me.
Oh, yeah.
So, well, I doubt that there's many people who have crazier ideas than me. So just throwing that out there. But
yeah.
So the simulation theory, the whole, so there's two different sides to it, and you're not talking about the computer aspect, right? You're talking, okay, right. Okay. So yeah, we're throwing the computer aspect out the door, but it's more of the consciousness. Mm-hmm. So what he explained to me was that we are the very ends of his thought forms that are physically playing out his ideas, all the possible ideas that, so I heard someone say that God can't just be a man, because there's something above that. It's just like a brain that just has everything moving, just like our brains control our bodies, and my thyroid, I don't know how that operates, but I'm still doing it. That God's doing all these different things, and that is exactly what he's doing. But and we are physically acting out all his different personalities. We are all his own different ideas acting things out. And like the hero's journey type of deal, where we're the centralized character, the hero of our own life, right? Like that kind of fits with the simulation theory, is that everyone else is just a projection of me, while I'm reflecting all of them to them. So it's like this whole idea, well, there would have to be one centralized character for everybody then. For a collective, there would be one central figure, and that is Jesus, and that's his mind that then we are all reflecting. So that's the simulation, is that it's essentially like he is about to be born into the world, right? And when I say the world, just like he's going to be born out of a womb. So you got to think like on a cosmic scale, this baby is in this mother's womb, and he's about to be born out. And when he is born, he wants to know exactly what to do and how to do it. So he plays out, while he's in the womb, he plays out all these different thoughts and scenarios. And each one of those thoughts and scenarios are all of us that are here now. And he's trying to figure out which is the best to be when he grows up. So it's like we're inside of his mind and he is inside of his mother's womb about to be born.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. That combines with a lot of thoughts I was having in the final month before my last child was born, and in the first few hours of him being born. Man, I was really on this, like, I mean, the whole time he was inside of his mother, that we knew he was there. You know, I kept thinking, like, is what's happening in there the most pure form of consciousness that a human can experience? You know, he wouldn't have ever heard a word. There's no inner dialogue, but there's thought. Right. You know, and I kind of got into this whole little, I'd say rabbit hole, but that makes it sound like I'm on the internet. It was all in my mind. You know, like this idea that we're at peak consciousness until we're born. And then as soon as he comes out, you know, it's like, what could he see? Like, I caught him as he came out, and it's like, could he see me? Could he see this? Or did he see vibrations? Does he only see vibrations as he comes out? And realistically, is my duty as his dad, am I making him less conscious? Am I going to teach him things to take him away from this like ultimate point of consciousness? I'm going to teach him how to look and see me and recognize me and his mother and his brother and the dog and the walls and the roof and the grass and the trees and the mountains. Like, were those things all there, but they're just like he doesn't see them like we do. We instead of, you know, it's the opposite of what most people think of as consciousness.
Right.
They think seeing the mountain is what makes us conscious, but what if we're not even supposed to be able to see, you know? You're
like indoctrinating him in order to communicate with him.
Yeah, I have to dumb him down to our level, you know? And I was really on a whole lot of that. So when you say that the simulation idea with Jesus's thoughts as he's like in a womb and coming out, you know, like that resonates with me a lot. When I said simulation theory in Jesus, you know, really I'm kind of being softball as I say that, for things I want to entertain. And you know, I also said no to the computer simulation because that's not what I'm into right now. But I do want to keep open to a computer simulation to some degree, even though I think that's a little easy. It's like low hanging fruit. Like, yeah, we got all these video games now. That must be what life is all about. That we're just living in a video game. Yeah.
Right.
You know,
life definitely acts similar. Well, okay. Actually, the algorithms for our social media and our video games act very similar to how life actually operates. The cosmic laws, if you will, the universal laws of reality, you know, like what you like and what you interact with, you're going to get more of that. And you're going to get all these tests or these different adventures. You may not call it that in the moment, but that's what's going to keep happening. These objectives will happen in your life and you have to get through them. So the video game aspect, like it operates that way, and that's a great analogy for it. But to me, like the whole, are we in some alien's computer? Like, you know, aliens, the way that word is, it has its own image and everything behind that word. So like when I hear alien and computer, it could be that way, but the perception of those different words, they have such strong meaning that everyone has their own imagery when that gets taken up. So simulation, as in consciousness having these different ideas and all, however that's expressed, if that is through a machine that is then producing all these physical things that we're then seeing and we're part of, like, yeah, that could be it. But it's just those words have such dramatic meaning to us, such strong meaning to us.
Yeah, they're loaded.
We can't think out. Yeah, loaded is exactly what it is.
Yeah, for sure. So like some other concepts that it's not that I don't want them to die, You know, they're not going to die just because I'm not thinking about them. But some things from my past that I've thought about that I try to keep open-minded to. Well, like keeping it on the more softball side, like I like, or take Jesus out of it for just a moment and say something like I feel without a doubt right now that we're not evolved, that I don't believe in evolution, right? Like that's not something that I'm currently entertaining, but I try to keep myself on a path where I could come back to that if I see that path open for me to think it. And, you know, sometimes I regress back to that for a moment. Like I think, well, back in caveman times, blah, blah, blah. And I go, oh yeah, wait, I'm trying to like shatter that. That was my indoctrination as a child. And now I'm trying to think maybe there weren't cavemen, you know? So with that concept in mind, you know, some things about Jesus that I've thought in the past, like I've entertained the Jesus was a mushroom idea when I was much, much, much younger. Wasn't even considering Christianity at the time, but my mind, you know, which is basically like stoned ape theory. You know, Jesus was the name of a type of mushroom that a bunch of monkeys started eating, and then they became conscious. We started to really think. We started to farm. We started to group together to take down giant animals as opposed to working as individuals, like, you know, something to those effects. But that's also softball compared to, you know, if I get really heavy, and I don't mean to offend by any means. I don't think that you would be, but, you know, I've entertained things like everything is upside down. Black is white. White is black, up is down, down is up, left is right, right is left. How possible could I see it to be that the concept of Jesus was actually the concept of Satan, and that the Vatican, the powers that be, thousands of years, hundreds of years, tens of years ago, last Thursday when the simulation started, got us flipped around. They hung up this dead guy on a cross that was actually the conquering of Satan, but they started putting that image into people's minds and got them to believe that he was the good guy and that we should all pray to him, and that if we spend enough time doing this, we'll bring Satan back. You know, I'm just being far out, you know, like with
Oh, well, I like your ideas. Well, a lot of them that I've shared, a lot of what you're saying with the whole everything is backwards and upside down and all that. Like I've literally had thoughts at times that I look up at the sky and I'm like, we're on the ceiling right now. Like there's something like really, we're totally upside down. And what you're saying with the caveman thing, the more that I read the Old Testament, the more I'm like, oh yeah, they were cavemen. Like these, so through reading the Bible and through getting rid of all the outside influence, through, you know, I wasn't talking to people on the podcast. I wasn't even listening to other people's podcasts. I wasn't really consuming anything outside of working, coaching softball, and listening to Christian music, which wasn't giving me any of these ideas, but it was just doing these things that weren't bringing in outside influence, really started to teach me that all of creation was physical at one point, and that the Holy Spirit wasn't within any of them, and that they were two separate things. And when the fallen angels came down into the daughters of men, what ends up happening is that produces some beings that had spirit within them, and they were looked upon like gods because they could do things that we can now do, being psychic and stuff like that. They could talk to you without with just thinking and things of that nature. So they were looked at as these deities, but the physical creatures, they had to be taught all these different laws because they didn't know left from right. They didn't know that killing was bad necessarily. They didn't have the moral compass within them that they knew all of a sudden like we do. It was they had to be told those things. It had to be written in stone and called the 10 Commandments. Like, these are the 10 things that you can and can't do. So I do think that that's a possibility. No, I don't think that we come from monkeys. I think that maybe monkeys and humans could have. Well, actually, I think that everything was just created pretty much as it is. But I do believe that there is some kind of evolutionary tactics that take place. And I think it's our own decision making that evolves us. I don't think that it's anything else we can do outside of that can evolve us. And I've had the same thoughts about Jesus being the mushroom. And what the Bible's taught me is that that's what the manna was, is the manna that Moses ate when he and all the other Hebrews, when they left Egypt and they were eating the manna, that was mushrooms. And Jesus says, when he's alive, he says, your ancestors ate the manna and they still died, meaning that didn't give them eternal life, that just gave them fleeting life, that they were then opened up to seeing the outside world, whereas Jesus gives you the full effect and you don't die, you just eternally live on. So yeah, what you're saying about Jesus being possibly, obviously we're not here to offend anybody, but we're saying him up on the cross is Satan and getting us to bow down to him. That's a very interesting idea. And I've had the idea that Jesus and Baal, every time I think of Baal or Baal, Baal,
yeah,
I get this imagery in my mind where it's this half Jesus, what we know of as Jesus, half Satan, like there's a horn and he has his 2 fingers up, 2 fingers down, doing all these different symbolisms. And that's the imagery that comes to my mind when I think of Baal. So it was only through my reading of the New Testament, and I read it through by myself, quietly. I read it through, speaking it out loud to myself. And then the third time through of reading all the Gospels, discussing it with other people who were Christian, different levels of Christianity already, and was talking things out. These are the Bible studies that I've been releasing recently. That doing that has really brought me to understand things in a whole new way. And he tells me things as I'm reading. He comes through me as I'm reading at different times. And he shows me different things throughout my day and my life. And I'll be watching YouTube and something will pop up and, like the next thing. And it's like this mind-blowing thing. And I just didn't have the opportunity to cancel on it because my hands are wet from doing dishes or whatever. And it's like the answer to my prayer that I asked for the day before, asking for discernment and asking for what is the truth. And like the different Gospels teach you different aspects of Jesus's life. Like Matthew, the whole book of Matthew is answering all of the Old Testament prophecies. Like Matthew, he was a Jewish tax collector who was a disciple of Jesus and was there for the whole thing. And his perspective is, I know the Old Testament very well. It wasn't called the Old Testament back then, of course, but he's like, I know all the scriptures very well. And he's fulfilling all of these prophecies. So his version of it is he's lining up like, oh, he fulfilled this prophecy, he fulfilled this prophecy, he fulfilled this prophecy. And it's all these prophetic things. Whereas you have Luke and Mark, they're documenting it as people who are outsiders, who are like historians who want to know what happened. And they're interviewing people and they're getting all these different people's takes on it. And they're like, they're getting converted into believers because of all these different people are like, no, this is what happened. Like, write this down because this is what happened. Then you get to John, and John, it's like the most mind-blowing thing. Well, firstly, a lot of people don't know it's not John the Baptist. When you think of the Gospel of John, I always thought it was John the Baptist, but it's not. It's his disciple John. And he's the one that wrote the book of Revelation as well. So he starts off with this concept like, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. And that word actually is logos in the Greek. Yeah. And that's why all these symbolism type deals happen with the conspiracy community. And you see all the triangles, you see all these businesses with their logos, because they're trying to put their logo in your mind. So, to fast forward through John, he's giving you like all of the stuff that he witnessed as like on a cosmic level of what's going on, like so much more grand than you could really understand in words. But when you start to study the four of them together, and then the book of Acts as well, the book of Acts is very important because that's what happens with all these people after his death, and why his death resulted in people continuing on his work, whereas there were numerous cults at that time would have go out to the desert. They would come back and they're like, he's the Christ, and he would be killed, and they would stop, and no one would ever stick up for him again. And Jesus said those exact words, that people will come and say, I am here, I am there, but don't go anywhere, because I am not any of those things. I will be within you. And there's different things that he says of people coming in my name but don't believe them. He's not saying for some future far off time that people are going to say he's back. Like, no, that literally happened in history, that there were dozens of people who said that I am Jesus returned, and they would get cults to follow them out there. And then once they were killed, that was the end of the cult. Nobody ever stuck through it. But the reason why the disciples did, Peter says in his book that the stones, talking about themselves, the physical creation, because they were still only physical creation, after Jesus died, the Holy Spirit poured into them and the stones became alive. The physical creatures that were there then had the seed planted in them, the seed of the Holy Spirit. And the best parable that Jesus ever uses is that there's a strand of wheat and he's holding it. He goes, this is just one strand of wheat. And then he rubs it away and it blows into, tiny little pieces all over the place. He says, this one strand of wheat, when it dies, it becomes many. And that's what he's saying, is that's how I understand that their physical creation didn't have the Holy Spirit within them, because when Jesus does that, Peter says that, and Paul calls him the new Adam, the new creation, where you have God within man to be one, that Jesus dying, his spirit, when he died, was then spread out into all of us, so that we each have the chance and the opportunity to grow that seed within us, so that we can bring him, the word, back to life through our actions.
Wow. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Like that's when true consciousness, as we see it today, took hold. Exactly. So then, as you're saying, the people of the Old Testament were like the cavemen, exactly. the in quotes unevolved. Mm-hmm. They hadn't evolved yet. So then you can see evolution within that time period right there, and then up to today.
Right, and we're hitting the next wall, which is, I don't know what comes next, obviously, but there's something beyond this that's like we're right up against it, right? In these very days.
Wow, the way you interpret things, it's very inspiring to me. With as my question that I'm asking. It's not quite in the form of a question, but the things I'm questioning here, you know, you're able to show me a way that we can accept things and continue to grow. I mean, because like maybe that's what my fear is I was using the, you know, I was afraid to do these things, to accept Jesus Christ into my heart. Is that I don't want to lose my ability to truly question everything. But what I'm sensing from you, not that you've said this, but what I'm sensing is that you get answers, like that mean something to you, which I don't know that I've gotten any answers that mean anything to me. I've only continued to pile on more questions, and this is not just in Jesus, but in all things. I keep piling on more questions, and sometimes I say, okay, I'm going to put on these goggles and look at things like this for now, and I'm going to see how much sense they make to me. But like I keep this reservation about, I want to be able to look at the earth and say the earth's flat for now, but I also want to be able to throw this back on and believe that we're on a ball in space with aliens that fly around us. You know, like I want to be able to interchange those. But if I were to fly up high enough that I could look down and I see a flat plane, then I like those, the other goggles wouldn't exist anymore.
Right.
So, you know, if I, you know, something that even though I've taken Jesus in with my prayers, like I haven't started reading the Bible. I have like a kid's Old Testament stories book, which is about the best I do. I do have a Bible. I have an old family Bible. But maybe one that's not quite as likely to turn to dust as I read it, you know, get something to start reading, particularly the New Testament. I'm far more familiar with the Old Testament than the New Testament, mostly because of, I mean, I learned a lot of it of both as a kid growing up in a Lutheran church. But then, you know, as I briefly mentioned more than once, there was that 20-year atheism period in my life. And I was in punk rock and heavy metal bands, and we loved to be sacrilegious and thereby like use Bible quotes in songs and things like that. And we never even thought about looking at the New Testament. It was like, it was all about, yeah, we got to get Leviticus in here, and we're going to look through here, and we're going to isolate the most, like, you know, brutal sounding stuff, and we're gonna like quote things like that to make, you know, to make, really, all we were ever doing was making a mockery of the entire thing, which you know, I feel horrible about. It's not something I necessarily repent upon or anything, because, you know, it was what it was at the time. I don't think
I think you do repent, because it sounds so. Repenting, it doesn't mean, you know, say words like, oh, I repent, let me say 10 Hail Marys. It means what you're saying is like, oh, I shouldn't have been doing it. It was, you know, it was something that I realized now I was trying to, you know, make it sound bad. You know, that's true repentance.
Yeah. Well, in that case, I do, you know, I mean, like I would never do that again. And I would never encourage anyone else to do that. Well, either with the New or Old Testament, or anyone else's religion that they really care about. Like if someone really cares about something, I don't think it's really something that we should be, you know, particularly in like a brutal heavy metal band, you know, making fun of, you know, right. I think it's real important to let people work things out and figure it out for themselves. So, you know, a metal band that's, you know, making fun of Buddhists, I don't think that's going to be any better than one that's making fun of Christianity.
Right.
Although good luck finding one that makes fun of Buddhists, but they all are making fun of Christ.
Yeah. That happens with everything, really. You'll find that everything is allowed to attack Christianity for whatever reason, you know, mainstream, that's not anything that liberals or progressives are ever going to stick up for. It's a very weird thing, but that's
and
the
even
one thing.
even most conservatives nowadays
Right.
won't stand up for that. You know, just to wax on that for a sec, you know, a lot of how I ended up where I was with the, you know, I could just say the anti-Christian stuff that I was into, which was directly anti-Christian, not it wasn't with Christ, it was against Christ,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a concept. You know, just heavy metal of like a satanic type. Those bands, I mean, it's really sad when I look back on a lot of that stuff. You know, there's bands like the band with the name Deicide, which is to kill a deity. They like homicide, but deicide.
Oh, wow.
You know, and all of their songs, you know, they had songs with titles like Slave to the Cross. And I mean, all of it was so demeaning towards Christians. And that, I thought was how would I put it? I want to say, like, I thought that those people were being strong and that they were going against the grain. Because, you know, keep in mind, this is my 80s brain into the 90s. And we still had people on TV who were condemning Ozzy Osbourne for his satanic lyrics, which were not really that satanic. Most of them were love songs or heartbreak songs. And then a few things sprinkled here or there. And then this image that was around him that made him seem like, in quotes, the devil. And I, you know, in general, it felt that together Christians and conservatives were always winning back then. They were in the same way that today the atheists and the liberals are always winning. It felt the opposite in the early 90s. It felt very the opposite. I was pro gay people in general, just because they were the underdog. If you were gay and you were having to hide in a closet for that because people would kick your ass and, you know, all those things, it would be like, yeah, no, I'm going to stand up for that guy.
Right.
You know, like that guy's being true to himself because the world is telling him not to do that, but they're still moving forward with it. And I might have seen something as brutal as the metal I was just describing as being like, yeah, the whole world is telling you to be Christian and conservative, but these guys, they're like throwing that in the dust. They're stomping on it, and they're destroying that, and they're like standing up for themselves almost.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I was wrong. I mean, I was in a lot of ways, but I don't think I was wrong in the assessment that was sort of the way of things at the time. However, as I see it, and I think that you'll agree with me on this a lot, that was corrupt churches, not Christians. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of people who were just going along to get along inside of corrupt churches that, you know, the church I went to, you and I have spoken about it before, although it briefly, it was so full of hypocrites. Everyone in there. I look back on it and I don't know that there was anyone in there with a spiritual compass. That it was a group of people who got together once a week, and they would reflect on the Bible, but I don't know how much actual reflection there was. It was just a sermon that they would sit through in order to then have crappy coffee and cake
for community.
Yeah. And the community was great. I don't condemn those people at all for the community that they provided for me when I was a child. You know, like I did a lot of great things with the people in my church. But as I got older and I started seeing, it became like brutally apparent to me that none of these people believe in God.
Right.
None of these people are adhering to what they're talking about. They're just here to keep up appearances.
Right.
And I sort of thought I cracked this code almost that, like, you know, this was only my world, but I brought it out to the whole world. And I said, oh, everyone is faking. none of these people really believe in God or Christ. They're just like, yeah, that's what everyone else is doing, so I got to do it too.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I think I was like completely right. Not completely, because it wasn't the whole world, but look at church attendance in 2022 versus 1992. You know, I don't have statistics on that. I've never even looked at statistics on that, but looking around myself, there were a lot more people going to church in 1992
Oh yeah.
than there were in 2019. I'll even be more fair and say 2019, because we dropped a whole lot more in the last 2 years with the whole pandemic crap. You know, then there's people still to this day who I'm sure, you know, are still a part of a church, but they virtually check in at church. And what does that word mean? What does virtual mean? It means to not actually.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, it means, you know, you could say, well, I'm virtually 7 feet tall, but really I'm only 6'1".
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I virtually went to church this Sunday. Oh yeah, good for you. You know,
Yeah.
What'd you get out of that?
That's a great point about the hypocrisy. And when I say community, I was meaning of what you ended up saying was that it's for appearances. You know, they're doing it to appear like, you know, they're there just suffering through whatever this pastor he's going on about something. I want to be watching the football game. I want to be home sleeping. I'm hungover. I got other things I can be doing, but my wife's dragging me here, and the wife is only wanting to be there because they're like, oh, it's button up because the Jones, you know, she's looking at us and, you know, she's judging us. And like, it was all just nonsense. And it still goes on to this day. And people, they really don't know God. And, you know, if God reveals himself to us in numerous ways, and if we are saying that we know God and we read the Bible and we pray and we go to church and we surround ourselves with godly people, but yet we're committing the basic sins of, you know, cheating or, you know, I'm not going to go on and name anything here, but just things that are not of God. If you're lusting after people, if you're quick to anger, if you're judging people, if you're doing these things, then you don't know God whatsoever. You're just wicked, and you think that your way is the right way, but this whole time you're convincing yourself that it's God's way, but it's not God's way because you're sinning in the most simplistic ways that you shouldn't be sinning in. And if you actually knew God, you wouldn't be sinning in that way. So I completely agree. There's so much hypocrisy within the church. I don't go to church myself, and I know that your co-host Adam, he started going to church not too long ago, which hats off to him. It's awesome to do that, and I'm not against going to church. I just don't have any calling to do so. I'm not drawn to go to any specific church or wake up at any specific time to make sure that I'm there and listen to the pastors. I get taught Christ through my life experience. God to me is bigger than a building, and he's bigger than a book. You know, I read the Bible every single morning, and every week I do a Bible study, and I learn a lot about him. A lot of the podcasts I listen to nowadays are about, you know, biblical mysteries, or not even necessarily mysteries, just about different books of the Bible that are mysteries to me, but it's not like this mysterious thing that people are trying to tune in for, but it's just like, you know, what does this actually mean in the book of Samuel? You know, something silly that I say silly, but, you know, not something that is going to be appealing to people when they, your typical person, when they see it. Like that's my interest, is learning God through all these different ways. So it's like I never stop going to church, really. I'm always just trying to listen and learn and figure everything out. And so, like you were saying a little while ago, is about the questioning aspect. And you have all these different questions in mind, and you like to throw on the different goggles and all. That's how I still am. And that's how I really got into Jesus, because I was like, I had this big moment where I was saved. I've told it before, where I was injured and then like I was delivered. I threw up demons. And that still didn't necessarily have me within God, within Jesus, I'll say. It was like I was like, all right, well, if I was doing things this way, let me try it like this. So if I was blasting, Eminem and Meek Mill and Tupac and Biggie, let me blast this Christian hip hop that I'm listening to now. Let me see what kind of effect that has. And different things that I was doing, like I wasn't ashamed then, so let me not be ashamed now. That really started having a profound effect. And I was like, all right, well, if I did it this way against Jesus, or just, not necessarily for him, well, let me now do this for him and see what happens. And it all starts to become significant and profound. And I would take off my quote unquote goggles of Jesus, and then I would put on the goggles of, like, okay, saying the Anunnaki are our creators, and see how that feels. And then it would be like, that's not right. Like, let me take these goggles back off and put those ones back on. It's more comforting. It feels more true to me.
Yeah.
So I would do a lot of that. And what started happening is all the other stuff. Like I am someone who is very extreme. I don't know if there's a thing called extremism, if that's like an affliction that people might have, but if that is a thing, I have it. I get extreme with everything I do. I jump from one extreme to another. It's how I've always been. I just get addicted to everything, and I consume in a very large way. So when I got into conspiracies, I became like the conspiracy like expert. Like I knew all the conspiracies. And then I got into spirituality, and I figured out all the secrets. There was nothing that I couldn't do. Remote viewing, astral projection, seeing things, all sorts of different stuff. I'm teaching people a year into meditation, and I'm teaching people that have been doing it 20, 30 years and blowing their minds, and they have no idea how I'm telling them their thoughts, and just different crazy stuff like that. So when I was podcasting big time, I was doing 3 episodes a week. I was doing 3 interviews every week, and I'm just consuming, learning. I'm, looking into these people, listening to their shows. And then God has me go into softball. So then I'm extreme into that. But then the consuming of outside information stopped for me. And it was like, just quiet the mind. And what I started to realize was that I didn't need the conspiracy stuff anymore. I didn't need the spirituality stuff anymore. I didn't even need the other biblical podcasts that I was just saying that I listen to now that I've started listening again. I didn't need that stuff either. God was like, just consume me, and I will provide for you. So when I start reading the Bible, and it's been every day, I don't know how long I've been reading the Bible now, but it's been almost a year. I did the whole New Testament, and I've gone through a good portion of the Old Testament so far, and I just do 2 chapters every morning. And then I do the weekly thing, Bible study, where we've gone through all 4 Gospels, and now we're in Acts. So I've been doing it a good portion, and he provides answers for me for spirituality questions and conspiracy questions that I had way back when that I never got an answer to. I'll be reading the Bible, and boom, it'll be right there. And it's just like, the other day, or a couple weeks ago at this point, I was on with Reality Czars, and he was talking about Bigfoot a little bit before we got going, and I was like, oh yeah, when I was reading the Bible, I had a couple thoughts about Bigfoot, because Esau, the way he's described, it seems like he may be a Bigfoot. And there's just like my weird mind that likes to have all these crazy thoughts has never gone away. Like, I was afraid when I got into Jesus that my psychic abilities would go away, and I was afraid that my special connection with God that I thought I had would die down. And that was, like you're saying, it's not really fear, but I don't really have another word to describe it. I was, for lack of a better word, I was afraid that I wouldn't know God the way that I did, but that never changed. It actually improved. It stopped having me hear people's, invasively hearing things, but instead it gave me this gift of discernment where I could like turn it on and turn it off if I wanted to, more or less. Like I was more in control. It was a more stable environment, and I never really changed. And the change is so subtle, it's little by little, that you never really notice that anything's different until you reflect and you're like, oh yeah, 6 months ago I was very different than I am now. It's like 3 months ago, yeah, I was pretty different. A month ago, not so different. But it's those big chunks when you look at it, it's like, yeah, I did come a long way.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? I think I got an answer out of that. I don't know if you know that you answered it.
I don't.
So like if I go with the goggles analogy, I think what I need to do is because like what I'm saying is I'm afraid to throw away those goggles. I'm afraid to throw away the goggles through which I look and I question whether or not Jesus is the good guy, which like even just saying it that briefly now, but as I did earlier, I feel icky saying that now. Like I don't feel right even invoking that concept in anyone's head.
Entertaining
right?
that thought.
Like entertaining that thought's not so like once upon a time when I was listening to that band Deicide I was talking about and I thought about something like that, I'd be like, yeah, what if? What if they're all wrong? And and it would invigorate me.
It was that adversary within you.
And what I'm saying is like I'm afraid to throw away those goggles and just strap on the Jesus goggles and then there I go, because I'm like putting a padlock on there and there I go. But I think what you said in the last bit you said there, like sparked me to go, you know what? No, I will forever keep those goggles within reach as long as my hand, like right now, I'm not reaching for those. It feels icky. Why would I put them on?
Mm-hmm.
The round earth, the ball earth goggles don't feel right now, so I'm wearing the flat ones. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that they're not right there for me to be able to do. And I think if Jesus is communicating with me the way that I think he is, which I didn't mention at all, and I don't need to get into, but like I've been feeling prayers being answered. I ask him not to guide me, but to guide my son on making a decision. My son makes a decision that's not what anyone would have expected, and it's the right one. And it's after that prayer. So, maybe I should be praying about the goggles. I don't know if I'll use the word goggle in my prayer, but be praying. I guess is what the prayer is. I'm asking for guidance. I'm asking him to tell me which goggles to grab, and when I am grabbing one that might seem to, we'll say, run in contrast with accepting Jesus into my heart, right? If I am accepting Jesus into my heart, grabbing those which seem contrary to that would be him guiding me to look at things through those lenses. And that's not at all taking me away from him. It's not taking me away from God. It would be Jesus telling me I need to look at things like this for a minute, because maybe looking at things like that is going to give me insight. Maybe he's going to tell me to put on the ball earth goggles to look at it, to understand better how NASA's lying to us.
Exactly. That's what he does. 100% what you just said.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's cool, man. I got the answer. I got to get going. I'll see you later. Thanks for no.
Yeah, well,
no, that's exact. I didn't think I would come to such a solid conclusion out of this, but like that's the invigorating thing to me now. Thoughts like this, like where it's like, oh yeah, I'm seeing this path. I'm following the path that I'm following no matter what. I kind of feel like that's outside of me no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And to have gotten to where I'm at, you know, going from Christian to atheist to whatever it is I am today.
Right.
Yeah, I hate labels, but you know, it's I'm not going to do anything that I'm not supposed to be doing. That's what it really comes down
Man
to.
of integrity.
I think that that's not always the case, and maybe if I let my guard down, I might not continue to be the case, and I could let something else influence me. But you know, as you just said, a man of integrity, that works. I'm someone I'm true to my own thoughts. I'm always true to my own thoughts. I'm not I don't bullshit anybody ever. If I'm ever bullshitting anyone, it's for comedy reasons. You know, right. It's having a little fun. When it comes to the real stuff, you know, I can't not speak truth. And I can't, if I hear Jesus say something, or, you know, like I'm not necessarily hearing words. If I'm guided by Jesus to do something, I either need to have faith that it's right, or I'm back to where I've been. And that doesn't seem like the right place to be.
Yeah, well, a lot of what you were saying, that he'll have you put on the wrong glasses just to see what it's like, you know, because now your shift in perspective has happened, and you have gained this understanding in this way, and you've been wearing these goggles for a long time. So let's go back and revisit the opposite view. What do you see now? And for me, that's how I came up with that evolution thing, is that, oh, we did evolve. They were cavemen essentially, but it wasn't the evolution that we've been taught. And, you know, there's so many different ways that he has taught me different things like that. Like, well, if you go in the Bible, Satan cannot create, but he has the power to manipulate and deceive into, he can change anything, really, right? And he can pervert the truth. He can invert the truth. So once I had that firm understanding, Jesus would then take me and say, okay, well, how is things, why do they teach it this way? And then I just think about it, and I think about it, and I think about it. And because I ask a lot of different questions, I think things through pretty thoroughly, I would come up with answers, and it would be like, wow, this is truly profound. And he would be like, yeah, you see, like, he never wants you to put down, I don't want to say he doesn't want you to, he's never going to force you to put down anything. Like all those different thoughts and goggles, you know, that's just the word that we've been using, that we're both understanding here. So when we put those things down, he's not like, no, don't pick that up. He'll be like, go ahead, you have free will, you know, pick it up, see what you see. And what happens is I saw straight through a lot of the conspiracy theory people that, you know, they're not exactly what you think that they are. They're not, you know, they're there maybe because it's a work related thing, you know, it's not necessarily just an organic thing like you did. And, you know, just some guy who felt the need to start a podcast. No, it's that maybe they're there for a reason. And same thing with spirituality. It's like, well, maybe these people are thinking these things for a reason. Maybe can you see that they're contradicting themselves and their different teachings? And he started pointing things out. And when I say you started pointing things out, I would just have random thoughts start popping up in my head, that like reincarnation and channeling. Like, how could they both be possible? If everyone's always reincarnating, then how can you channel anybody? And has any Christians ever been able to be channeled? Have any of the disciples been channeled? Has Jesus, you know, people claim that Jesus was channeled, but what about all Paul? Like, people claim that different archangels are being channeled, but Has your average grandma who was a Christian, has she ever been channeled? Like, no. Well, why would that be? Why is that? And that got me on the path of thinking and understanding that when people die, and this is biblical, so that's, I didn't know this at the time, but it's when people die and they're unclean, do they not go to heaven? And is that how they're able to be channeled? But the ones who are clean, and I'm not saying all Christians are clean, obviously, we're just talking about hypocrites, but are the ones who are clean, they're up in heaven and they're unavailable to be reached. So then I find in the Bible that, yeah, unclean spirits, they just die and they hang around us, and we'll call them ghosts or spirits or something to that effect.
Does the Bible call that purgatory?
I don't know that it calls it purgatory. I don't have a full answer, but I know that they call them unclean spirits that are the ones that are doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, so like he answers things for me that I don't even know I have the question of, because I never conceptualized it. But as soon as he gives me the answer to one thing, then it gives me answers to B, C, D, and E that I had questions way back before that I forgot I even had, but he answered them once I had all the information lined up.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's, I think it's important for us to think things that run contrary to themselves in an honest way. Not, I don't know, if you're doing it dishonestly, then you're just lying to yourself and people around you. But if you entertain two concepts like channeling and reincarnation, and you fully entertain them, you fully take them on and think about them from a true, it's absolutely true as you think about it. And then the other is absolutely true as you think about it. I don't think there's a better way to come to understand what's really happening than to think about things that run contrary to each other. The classic of that I used to say more commonly was, I think it's important to be able to entertain flat earth one day and then hollow earth the next day. Which now I've talked to so many people who believe in different concepts that of course those can run next to each other. But when I used to say that, I used to only picture hollow earth being a ball,
right,
and flat earth as being a plane. And so it just seemed like I couldn't hold those at the same time. Well, if I'd sworn over to one or the other at that time, then I wouldn't have been open to the several new people that I've spoken to who have completely unique thoughts on those, that they don't run contrary to each other.
Right. They're both.
Yes, exactly. And, and I think, if I want to keep myself if I want to keep my mind open to the idea of thinking about things that run contrary to I'll just say the existence of Jesus Christ, I need to be able to be okay with that. I need to put my faith into Jesus, or into it all, to know that I'm going to, as we've been saying with goggles, I'm going to end up with the right goggles on at the end of the day. Because if I'm being true to my heart, then I'm going to hear what is coming into my heart, and I'm going to end up in the right place always. Even if I'm not in the right place at a single moment in time, it's working me towards being in the right place.
Right. Yeah. I totally 100% agree that you have to run with, if this is true, then what if this is true? And that is really the only way to get rid of the false information. So that is what that post was that ended up bringing us together. Like I said, life is just about intention unless you're a Christian and say amen, then that means that you're worshiping Amen Ra. Like, yeah, I can say like, oh, you're a Christian, and when you say amen, it just means Amen Ra. But I also think that life is just about intention. So like, how do you justify that in your mind? Because if it's just about intention, and my intention is just to end the prayer, then obviously I'm not worshiping some unknown deity. And the other thing I said on there was, there is no objective truth. It's all based on your perception, except that statement has to be objective in order for it to be true, and
Yeah.
therefore then that statement is not true, because like people, they don't really think things through that way. Will say things because they sound very good, they're very sound arguments, until you start to put them together and you start to really question everything, and then it's like, oh well, that it can't be true because I just said there is no objective truth, but now I'm telling people and what I think is an objective truth.
Mhm.
So, there's a lot of that stuff. And until you start to do that, you don't have an objective truth. And then you will find out that, oh, there actually is objective truth.
Right. Right. Oh yeah. It's I mean, that's the way we got to kind of work everything out.
Mm-hmm.
Everything from what we're going to have for breakfast to, where we're going to transcend to when we leave this realm.
100%.
It's you can't lock yourself in, but you have to recognize it when it's solid.
Yep. Yeah, you have to. And Howdy McCoskey, that's some of the best. I don't want to say advice because it wasn't just advice to me, but some of the best information he ever said was, you can't really know truth, but you can recognize the lie, and then you can let go of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard him say that. That is profound.
Yeah.
It's so true. And if we shed more and more lies all the time, at least we know we're getting closer.
Yeah.
Always a little closer.
And the best way to do that is, like you said, is you don't BS people. You stay truthful. You get the foundation of truth within yourself. You know what truth is. You don't BS yourself when you're, you don't. So a lot of people, they're overly hard on themselves, and then they're underwhelmingly hard, underwhelmingly soft on themselves. Like sometimes they'll be like, oh, I'm such an idiot. I did this wrong and that wrong. But then when they do something else wrong, they're like, no, I wasn't wrong. Like, no, that was you. And it's like, no, you're not being objective. You're flowing with your emotions. But if you are, okay, I messed up, I don't want to do it that way, both of those times, then you're being truthful. Then you're recognizing truth within yourself. You're not letting yourself slide just because you don't feel like being hard on yourself. You're not being too hard on yourself because you're not emotionally unstable. You're just like, okay, you're finding the true medium, and you're riding that wave of truth. And when you continually do that, and it takes years, I'm not perfect at anything that I do. So I don't want anyone thinking that that's what I'm saying up here. But when you are truthful to yourself first, and then to everyone else around you, that is going to set the grounds for the way, the truth, and the life to make himself known. And a lot of what you've said here tonight, I don't want to put any labels on anybody, but you're definitely a man of Christ, having the integrity, having the truth, having the open mind, the not condemning people, wanting to stick up for the little guy, as you were describing earlier. There's many different characteristics that you possess that you're not even recognizing, not necessarily that you don't recognize it, but that you may not be giving yourself the proper credit that you are a man of Christ, that you're doing all the things that book, that book laying down right there, that's the Bible. That book tells us to do all the things that you are doing, you and your wife. I know your wife pretty well as well. And you're growing your children to become people that Christ wants children to become like. So you guys are doing it. And as soon as you start picking up that book and start reading it and start to develop those words and understandings within yourself, you're going to have a lot of those questions answered. And a lot of the ones that aren't really necessary to your life, you'll let go of them, and they'll still be answered at some point in the future. And you just won't be concerned with it now. And then when it's answered for you in a month or a year, 6 years, whatever, you're just going to have the most profound memory, because you're just going to be like, man, I always had that question and I never had it answered for me. And boom, here it is right here in the Bible. And I didn't know it until I got to this point and had this understanding and blah, blah, blah. You know how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. I think you nailed it there, man. I need to pick up a Bible. Like for real. Not I mean, I got my family one, which is definitely a real Bible, but it's not something I can, carry around with me or anything like that.
I'll show you this one that Mimi recommended because this has a lot of good information in there. You can get this for free. You can go to the website. I'll have her message you or Lanny what it is because she just found it not too long ago. What website it is, because there's like a lot of stuff in here where if we're going through this part, this will say, okay, read Romans 10:17, and it has a little passage on background information about Romans 10:17. So it gives you a lot of contextual stuff and a lot of background information on what you're reading.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great addition to our Bible study. So she'll stop me all the time and she'll be like, yeah, let me read this part. And a lot of the time what happens is I'll stop in the middle of my reading and the Holy Spirit just coming through me and I'll blurt something out and then she'll read later and it'll be like essentially what I just blurted out. And it just lines up so much. I'm like, oh, I should have just, let her do her thing instead of me jumping in there too early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll check that out. The one that appealed to me just hearing described too was when I talked with Bart Sabrell, the Moon Man guy.
Yeah.
He said that he read, I think it was called 365 Days of the Bible. And it was just, it's like I think he said a new international version, but it's like broken to read, recommend start here on January 1st and, read this much each day. So you can kind of use it as a calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of breaks it into a chunk that's just like, and he said it took him like something like 4 years of having that. And he just stuck with the regimen. He'd miss a day here or there and try and catch up. But then eventually after having read it all the way through cover to cover a few times, that's when it really started to sit in for him.
Yeah,
it sounded appealing.
Yeah, I have an NIV version, the New International Version. To me, it doesn't really matter which version you read. Obviously, you'll hear different people proclaim different versions, and there is different translations, and there's a lot you can get into about all that. But it's truly, like we were saying before, the intention or the essence behind the words, whether it says in or on, whatever the context may be, the word, the essence is there that you can gather what is being said, and start with one Bible. In our Bible study, I have people that bring their King James version. I have my New International Version. I read that, and when mine doesn't line up with theirs, then we'll go back and we'll read it. Or sometimes my version will have a verse that is put at the bottom of the page. It's not in the actual reading. This has only happened 2 different times. It's not in the actual reading, but then someone will point it out and they'll be like, hey, you're missing a line. And then I'll go and see that it's at the bottom. So then we'll read it that way. So it is good to have different perspectives and different Bibles in there. But to me, I mean, it's the essence behind them that really gets it.
Yeah, I would imagine, like many things in life, like, this being it's a book though, but many other things that aren't necessarily in the form of book, it doesn't matter if you're going to take away what you're going to take away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's I don't think there's enough difference between the different versions that are out there today that you're going to like miss the point of a story.
Right.
Or any of the allegories or anything like that. Yeah, it's more like getting bogged down in the details of it. for really hammering it out. And if that's the case, then that seems like I'm probably going to have been making a lot of progress to get to the point where I'm getting bogged down in details, and then multiple versions of the Bible would start becoming, necessary.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So this one does have exactly what you were saying, at the different dates.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it has in the back, and I'll tell you to read which ones. I don't know that you'll get through the whole Bible in 365 days, but it does have that in the same one that I was telling you about, the New Believer's Bible, for anyone listening.
And I would imagine too, there's probably 1,000 websites out there that give you concepts of how to break it down into bite-sized chunks that as well. So
yeah, what I've done is every morning I read 2 chapters, and I read it out loud so that I'm reading it with my eyes, I'm hearing it with my ears, and I'm still reading it in my mind. Or actually, so I'm speaking the words, I'm seeing the words, and I'm hearing the words. So 3 ways I'm consuming the Bible. And I do the weekly thing. We do 4 chapters over like about an hour or so every week. But doing it in this way, it like leaves cliffhangers for me. And sometimes I'll do like 3 chapters. Maybe if they're small, I'll do 4 or whatever. But I don't have too much time in the morning. I do it before work. And I read the 2 chapters, and this blanket behind my head, I throw that over my head, and I do a little 15-minute meditation, sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes. And I just allow whatever to come to me, whether it's maybe I'm super focused on work and I have a lot running through my mind and I'm just trying to work out some details. Maybe I have too much running through my mind and I'm just letting go of all my thoughts. But a lot of the time I'm like hearing and seeing things that I just read, and it's like really connecting stories together for me. But it's great to get into the Old Testament. I'm not someone who ever read that, and to have like these famous characters or these names of characters that I've heard so much about, and reading their stories and being like, oh, that's like, everyone should know that. Like, this is super simple. Like, why didn't I ever read this before? So it's very cool to have that those understandings now behind those famous characters.
Yeah. That's why I mentioned I have a children's version of several parts of the Old Testament. It's not like the entire Old Testament, but it's broken down as like children's stories. And I got that years ago, before I had even really started this leg of this journey for my son, because I was like, I don't want him to be that kid that if he's around other Christians and they reference something from the Bible, I don't want him to be the like, what are you talking about? Noah's what? Right. Noah's Ark. What are you talking? Like, especially, I mean, because I was just seeing culture in the world as it is today, that it was like, hey, it's possible that someone could grow up and never hear about Noah's Ark. Like that wasn't possible back in the 80s and 90s. Like it was just part of, like, I mean, for one thing, it hadn't started with schools yet. I mean, it started in the 90s really, but that whole separation of church and state started becoming like militant. Right. But before that, it was like kids, if half the kids in school go to Sunday school, 100% of the kids on the playground are going to hear about the stories that they learned about in Sunday school. You know what I mean? And aside from homeschooling, I think it's possible, if someone went to public school, can you go all the way through public school, graduate your grade 12 and
never hear about Noah?
Never heard about Noah? I bet it's possible.
Well, here's something that's interesting that I just read the other day at work. Well, while I was working, it wasn't for work, but I was reading pieces of the book of Noah that's at the end of the book of Enoch, because I've heard people say this, that it says somewhere in the book of Enoch that the angels claim to have built the ark. But I've never read that in the book of Enoch. I've read it multiple times. I've never seen it say anything like that. So that's something that they'll say like, oh, that's why I don't trust the book of Enoch. but it may be in 2 Enoch, but that has nothing to do with 1 Enoch. But anyway, at the end of 1 Enoch is the book of Noah, and it says that only his father and grandfather knew his name, but they didn't call him by his name because everybody who lived at that time, they were so into magic that they thought that if they gave up his proper name, that people could then bind him in some magical sense. So they didn't ever use his real name in that time. So then you have like these possibilities that he was named all these other names in different cultures, like something that's it begins with a Z, Zethustra or something like that, an Egyptian or Sumerian, that that character fits Noah. Like, well, it's possible that's what they called him because nobody knew his real name.
Yeah. Well, I'm really open to that because, you know, I'm it's not like I've studied all these different books from different religions and such, but I'm led to believe that a lot of other cultures have talked about the great floods and, you know, someone surviving, and maybe it's not 2 pairs of each animal on a boat, but that they did something that allowed humanity and animals to survive. And you know, I think that very likely could be the same individual all the way across, or maybe it's not an individual, but like a small culture that survived, you know, and maybe there was a leader of that, and that would have been Noah. It wasn't necessarily just Noah, his wife and the animals and his sons too, I believe, right?
Yeah. And their wives.
Yeah. So, but then that all of a sudden, yeah, that's just a small community, you
right.
know?
Yeah, and it's there is a lot of different interesting things. I've come across like 30 plus civilizations have a flood story. And you know, we could get into this at some other time. It's a whole thing unto itself. But what I truly think now, after having these goggles on for as long as I have, is that Noah's family was the only Israelites, that the people of God that were chosen. You know, they weren't Israelites at that time because Israelites didn't happen until Jacob, the grandson of Abraham, his name was changed into Israel, and then he had 12 sons, and they are the 12 tribes of Israel. So Noah was from the chosen line of God, and that he was saved and his family members. But other civilizations, they also have people saved, but they'll always have different things. Like the Hopi will say the ant people came up from out of the earth and brought them into caves, or you know, there's a lot of different things like that where these people, maybe these what we call aliens or demons or whatever from the hollow earth, they came up and they took humans down there, and then they interbred with them, so that all these civilizations that are talking about these floods and coming up after, none of them were pure humans. Only Noah's line was pure human, and all the others were mixtures of Nephilim, so to speak.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. Very fascinating.
Yeah. So this was a great conversation, my friend. Was there anything else that you wanted to say, or do you want to plug away?
Oh no, I think we hit everything I wanted to talk about. I mean, I can plug away and just say, I mean, it's brief. I can just say, come check out The World as It Is Today, where my wife Lanny and I break down different subjects having to do with our culture as it is today, largely focusing on family. But then also I got Debra Gets Red Pilled with Adam, which is also sometimes called Into the Apocalypse. I'm not sure where we settle on the name these days. If Debra's there, it's
Into
a Debra.
the Red Pill.
Yeah, Into the Red Pill. There we go. But yeah, that's a great show. If anyone hasn't checked it out, the Debra Gets Red Pilled side of it is extremely awesome. It's a concept that Adam came up with to have his mother-in-law, his blue-pilled mother-in-law, come on and he has experts on to explain things that she never could have thought about before. And she doesn't always swallow the red pill, but she'll at least get close enough to taste it.
Yeah. So I've been on now 3 times, and the last time was the first time I met Debra, and it was a fascinating conversation. A lot of Georgia Guidestones talk.
Oh yeah, which was cool because she was familiar with the Georgia Guidestones. It wasn't a lot of the time when we have someone on, especially if it's farther out stuff, it can be hard with Debra because me and Adam want to start by talking about stuff that's down in the weeds, and she's going, as it was on your episode before you came on, wait, dinosaurs didn't exist?
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we just drop things that are a little too much, as though everyone either knows this or knows that we believe this. You know?
Right. Well, I think that we're in a time with the conspiracy theory community that everybody's a black belt, because there's so much stuff going on that it's like, okay, what am I gonna look at today? And you just listen to so many different podcasts and you hear everything. Like, I don't know anyone in the conspiracy community that's not, pretty knowledgeable into Tartaria and like the idea that dinosaurs weren't real and space is fake, and so many different things that just like 2 years ago, if I was to hear that, I would have laughed at it all.
Yeah. And most conspiracy theorists did at some of those concepts a couple years ago.
Flat Earth.
Yeah, flat Earth. Tartaria is one, I rejected both those when I first heard them, but it takes a little while. And then, here we are a few years down the road, and it's like, oh, cool. We've got a community of a whole lot of people who've over time on their own journeys come to understand these things. And it's cool to have, as you put it, black belt conversations where we're all on the same page and we can just run with it.
Right. It's all about entertaining the ideas. And I don't really close out too much until like I lose all those lies. Once I lose enough lies of it, I'm like, okay, I'll just throw out those goggles, because I know that it's deception. And it's hard. We've been talking about that a lot this episode. I will say that at times it's hard to let go of things. And then once you do, it's like, you're freed from this chain that you didn't know you were chained down, and it's just like a weight has been lifted off, and it's just like a burden, a big old burden that you didn't know you had on you is just gone, and it feels so good.
Yeah, I think a final thought would be that it's good to let things go and let anything go, because if it's destined to be thought about more, it'll come back to you.
Yes. And it'll come back better than ever.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So that's the idea behind the Lent of 40 days. You give up something. Like I gave up coffee one time. I gave up weed another time. I stopped smoking a while ago now, but when I gave up these things, then they came back to me even better. Like I went from smoking weed every day to then I learned how to make edibles, really good edibles. And then I gave them up for 40 days. And what happened was then there was like CBD, where it was completely legal what I was doing. And I was still able to, get high and so on and so forth. And, just everything, you give it up. And if it comes back to you, it comes back better than ever.
It's the old, if you truly love something, if you truly love your dog, let them go. And if it's meant to be, they're going to come back. It's true with everything in life. And I think that's just as true for concepts that people who are, in quotes, conspiracy theorists or whatever. If you are ready to let any of your stuff go and you do that, it'll either sail away, and that's fine because you let go of it. But if it comes back to you, that's when you know it's the right thing.
Yeah. Amen to that. All right. So everybody that's out there, go sign up, patreon.com/goodness over darkness. Go to the YouTube channel, Goodness Over Darkness. Hit the subscribe button, like this, share it around, comment, do whatever. Make sure you go follow. Where can they follow you, Chudx?
They can follow me on Instagram at Mr. Chudx Indeed. And it's about the same handle for Twitter, Chudx Indeed. And then also follow my wife. That's a much more interesting page with greener postures. That's Twitter, Instagram, Proton Mail, greener postures, a play on greener pastures, but instead a posture, because we've got green, straight postures for our new way of looking forward.
Yeah, and I will say that Mimi is a big fan. She's been going to a lot of Lanny's classes, and she highly recommends that you guys all get involved. So she couldn't be here for this conversation, but that is something she wanted me to tell everybody. So make sure you go check out all that stuff, get involved, and learn how to start doing your own stuff.
Preserve your own food. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.